Signing for you for an extra 5. Bitcoin? I thought they said the queue was when they close the door, right? I guess so, I guess. Yeah, because the other... Well, front seat. You can take pictures and... I mean, you got a fan club and everything. Aren't they going to close the door? It was not the queue, I was told, or no? When they closed it? All right. Could you close the door, maybe? I don't want to compete with that outside noise. All right, go ahead, take out Louis first. Why's your phone upside down? Tara, could you close the door? Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or early afternoon, late morning, however you want to view it. My name is George. I'm on staff with Oxford House here. I got the privilege of working with the northeast part of the country. There's some announcements. Welcome to the 2022 World Convention. I've been to a lot of these, and this has been pretty good so far. Even me, who gets burnt out on these kind of things, I've enjoyed it. It says lanyards and name badges are required to enter all sessions. Silence your cell phones during the breakout sessions, or we'll take them. No side. They do that in court, though, don't they? So, I mean, this is very serious in here. Where was it? No side conversations during the panel. Step outside if you need to talk. Please don't smoke, vape near any entrance, anywhere. Dispose of cigarette butts properly and safely. No littering. Take notes during the session to relay back to your chapter. They probably spent a lot of money to have you come represent them, make them proud. Questions will be at the end, so after each panelist, we'll go to another one, and if you got any questions, write them down, and we're going to try to save time at the end. This is the Working with Specialties courts. In 1990, there were only 1 or 2 drug courts in the country. Today, there are more than 2,300. The practice and theory of drug courts are simple. It's better to an alcoholic or drug addict into treatment rather than send them to jail. In jurisdiction after jurisdiction, drug court judges have found that drug court participants tend to do much better if they live in an Oxford house. The NADCP is a national nonprofit organization that has promoted, developed, and educated judges around the country on the value of drug court interventions. Not only does such interventions motivate alcoholics and drug addicts to begin and master the recovery process, but it also saves taxpayers the cost of incarceration or repeated cycling in and out of detoxification and treatment. Paul Malloy, co-founder and CEO of Oxford House, Inc., served on the board of directors of NADCP during its formation years. Oxford House is a natural partner of drug courts. Many drug court judges have found that their clients do better in an Oxford House than returning to a neighborhood where they are likely to return to old friends and old habits. Panelists are very familiar with the working of drug courts and will offer their observations and experiences with them. They will also discuss how Oxford Houses can best serve drug court clients, any expectations of drug courts working with Oxford Houses. Our first panelist, oh, you know what, this is pretty cool. Usually the judges call me up. Our first panelist is the Honorable Ken M. Stoner. He's Oklahoma District Judge, Drug and DUI Diversion Courts. It's pretty simple. Forward and back on the bottom right.
Right there. All right. Scrolling. How about that? All right. My name is Judge Stoner, and it is my pleasure to be here. I mean, seriously, I've been looking forward to coming for several months, and I got to come to the Oxford House World Conference last year. It was a blast. I spoke at some of our regional events, but whenever you present to a group, you know, it's probably best to start with, you know, some humor, something kind of funny. And I told this joke last year. It's not a joke; it's actually a true story. But it still got a little bit of mileage in it, so I'll share. I was presenting to a group of like state leaders. It's called Leadership Oklahoma, and I was trying to persuade them, hey man, we got to do something different on this criminal justice side. And it was really important to be funny, and so I was talking to my wife. I was like, honey, I've got to come up with something funny to say. Can you help me? And she said, I think you should just skip that. You're not very funny. And I said, well, hang on a second. That's not true at all. I'm actually funny. People laugh at my jokes all the time. And she said, bless your heart. you know that people laugh because you're the judge, right? And I was like, oh. She said, just tell everybody your name is Judge Stoner. You're in charge of drug court. That's plenty funny. That's your joke. So there you go. Anyway, I am going to talk about working with treatment courts. But first, I just want to maybe get to know you guys a little bit better. Let's get to know each other a little better. First of all, do I have any Okies in here? All right, so it's my Okie homies right there. All right, good to see you guys. Anybody is a drug court participant or drug court graduate? All right, very cool. All right, man. Congratulations, and of course, everybody else in here, you're in recovery, so you are my people. You are my people. And I tell you what, if I have an opportunity to hang out, people would ask me, if you'd rather hang out with a bunch of judges and lawyers, or would you rather hang out with people in recovery? I'd actually rather hang out with people in recovery. They're actually far more interesting. They're kind of more, we'll say, more curious, growth-oriented, open-minded. I mean, they're courageous, too. They've got a lot of courage, and I admire them. I really admire people in recovery that have gone through, you know, that hell of addiction and got to the other side of it. Now, if I do hang out with judges or lawyers, they're not really quite as interesting. They're not bad people. They're typically very well intentioned. I do get to work with judges and law enforcement, and I know there's friction between those groups. You know, people in recovery and law enforcement and judges. And whenever I talk to them, I tell them about you, and I tell them about, man, you know, someone's past does not have to equal their future. People can change; they can be very different. And the person you think you saw in your courtroom, or if you had to put handcuffs on them, that really isn't the real version of them. That was kind of like a version of them that was really kind of driven by their disease or disorder. And that's really not who they are, and you have to get to know them a little differently. And so, so I'm talking to you, and I'm going to tell you that most of the people that judges and law enforcement, they are well-intentioned. My friction with them is they tend to be a little rigid in their thinking, sometimes a little closed-minded, and they're kind of these little comfortable bubbles, you know, and they don't always want to change. But so anyway, I love working with people in recovery, in addiction recovery, and a lot of them it's because they have this courage. And I do talk a lot about courage in my treatment court. I do think courage is probably a fundamental, probably the most important virtue. Matter of fact, Maya Angelou, she's our poet laureate, had once said, courage is the most important value, most important virtue, because without that, you can't consistently practice any other virtue. And so you have to have courage to be and stay in recovery, because you have to have the courage to sit with discomfort while you're making changes. And half the time your brain is telling you, this isn't going to work. Why do I have to be uncomfortable? And you got to have the courage to sit with that and go through it, because, you know, whenever you're in recovery, and by the way, courage, by the way, some people get confused about it. They think it's being fearless. It is not that. Fearless, it's about having fear or anxiety or discomfort, and in the presence of that, leaning into it rather than running away from it. So courage is is being afraid but acting anyway, is being anxious but doing the right thing in the face of anxiety. And you know, basically that's where growth happens, right? Growth happens whenever you have the courage to kind of lean into discomfort. So anyway, when we talk about growth, growth is like when I think about what is the nature of an acorn? The nature of an acorn is to become a mighty oak. But you know, if an acorn, if I just had it and set it on my desk, and I didn't put it in the ground, I didn't water it, if I didn't nurture it, didn't have sunlight, it's not going to turn into that. And so, you know, when we think about recovery and addiction, and you think about courage, sometimes it starts small, but you nurture it, and you kind of water it, and you respect it, and next thing you know, it grows, and it keeps growing, and just like that acorn, it will turn into the giant oak. That courage will be the force that transforms you into you know what it is you're meant to be. So it does kind of remind me. I would never ever wish addiction on someone. I mean, it is just it's a horrible disease. It takes your house, your car, your kids, your family, everything you ever cared about. Sometimes your teeth's gone, and you know, and your dignity and your respect, and it is just very complicated to get out of it. I also wouldn't wish gel on anybody too. I mean, gel's, you know, it's a tough, you know, bed bugs, horrible food. It's just horrible. That said, it kind of reminds me. But here I am saying I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but yet here you are on the other side of that, and I'm saying, man, you're the people I want to hang out with. And so it reminds me of a Zen story that I want to share with you. Imagine like medieval China. There was a little village, and in the little village there was a family, and this family had a son that had turned 16 years old. And in celebration of the 16-year-old's birthday, the father had bought a horse to give to the son. That was going to be his horse. And they put the horse in a pen, and everyone says, "Oh, this is good. You know, he has a horse." And the monk says, "Well, I don't know. We'll see." And then the horse broke down the fence and got out and ran away. And everyone said, "Oh no, the horse is gone. This is horrible." And the monk says, "No, I don't know. We'll see." And then horses do what horses do, which they herd up, you know. And so this horse that had gotten away actually had run into a couple other wild horses, and because the fence was broken and that horse knew where the food was, the horse came back and it brought two other wild horses with it to feed. And they woke up one day and the horses were back in the pen, and they closed the gate, and they now had the one horses turned to three horses. And everybody said, "Oh, well, this is wonderful. This is fantastic. This is good." And the monk says, I don't know. We'll see. And then this young man says, "These two wild horses, they need to be broken." And so the young man, the 16-year-old, got on the horse and was trying to break the horse, and he fell off, and he broke his leg, and he was injured. He couldn't do anything, and everyone says, "Oh, no, he broke his leg. This is horrible. This is horrible." And the monk, of course, says, "Well, I don't know. We'll see." And then a war broke out in the region next to this village, and when the war broke out, they came into the village, and every young man of fighting age was drafted, and they were drafted, and this young man, because he had a broken leg, he couldn't fight, and so he wasn't drafted. But all the other young men in that village that went off to fight, they were all killed. And so when you look back at the story, you think, well, wait a minute, you got one horse turned to three horses? Well, that was good. And then, well, wait a minute, you had a broken leg, which is bad, but I don't know, but the broken leg ended up saving your life. And so, what is it? Is it good or bad? Well, I'd never wish addiction on anybody. I wouldn't wish jail or prison on anybody. But, I mean, sometimes it saves your life, and it is such a better existence. I've been really interested lately. There's a woman in recovery has kind of started this, her version of the 12-step, whatever. It's called the Luckiest Club. I don't know if you've heard that, but the Luckiest Club, you can go to like luckiestclub.com.org or something, and part of her, she believes, man, I'm so lucky to get to live in recovery. I didn't know my life could be like this, and it's such a better life than I ever thought possible. And the life that I live is more vibrant and more energetic than a lot of the people who are not in recovery. And so in a way, it's a blessing. So anyway, I just want to let you know, I respect that you're here. I'm so glad to be here. It really is an honor for me. But I do want to talk a little bit about treatment courts in general. So we have a general familiarity with treatment courts. I do work I've been a district judge for 5 years. I preside over one of the largest treatment courts in the United States. We're in the top 1% in terms of size of our program. We do follow the guidelines that are set by the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. This is what George was talking about, that Oxford is a national partner with NADCP. There's a lot of research that goes into drug courts and how we work with drug courts. And to me, the problem with drug courts, there are some good and bad drug courts out there, by the way. Most of them are good, some of them are not. But if you'll follow the guidelines that are set up by the National Drug Court Institute, you tend to do very well. There's also versions of drug court that are kind of like problem-solving courts. There's a certain drug court that's really focused on tribal communities. It's called Tribal Healing to Wellness Courts. And I also preside over a program called Justice for Vets is the national organization, but we have guidelines that are set up for people, men and women with prior military service, to be in a drug court type setting, but we communicate with military type language, military symbols, and it's just an incredible model. The treatment courts, if they're done correctly, they do work really well. That's probably consistently the programs that get the largest, we'll say, gold stars in our criminal. It's one of the few things in our criminal justice system that gets consistently a gold star. They are just generally, just to be familiar with them, they are considered to be the highest level of supervision in all the criminal justice system. They're somewhere usually between 2 years and 3-year programs, 1.5 to 3 year programs. They are for people that have usually been in the criminal justice multiple times, usually not first offenders, and they have high need. That means they have a moderate to severe substance use disorder or moderate to severe mental health issue. And the team that works in a treatment court, we're really focused on problem solving. So I'm going to use an analogy here in a minute about addiction and addiction recovery, is that people that aren't familiar with addiction recovery, they're not familiar with addiction, they have what I call very reductionist thinking. They think, well, the problem is the drugs. If they just quit using the drugs, they'd be fine. If they just quit, that's the problem. If they could just quit, it'd be easy. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm telling you, if they could quit, they would have done it by now. If they could just quit, that would be really easy. And it's not really about the methamphetamine. It's not about the alcohol. It's part of it, but that's not the whole story. It's more like being stuck in a traffic jam, and it's a lot of things. It's not one thing. And I'm going to show you a slide here in a minute that kind of helps illustrate that. But the team members, the lawyers, the therapists, probation officers, the judge, they all work on problem solving, like what is the traffic jam this person's stuck in and how do you get the traffic going? We use encouragement and support to kind of encourage the behavior that we want. And then we use sanctions to correct behavior and to help people follow the guidelines of the program. In my program, I am not interested in punishing people. I don't punish people. But you might get a sanction, but the sanction in the program is not designed to punish you. It's trying to spark motivation to get you to change to follow the guidelines of the program. So if you get a sanction, it's just try to give you some motivation or perhaps some insight so you can think about, man, why do I do what I do? And let's try again. And so anyway, that's a little overview of how treatment courts work. And I'm going to kind of force here. Well, if you think about addiction, and this is an illustration that I show when I get to talk to other professionals like judges, and is that if you think about addiction and recovery, it is a systems issue. And it also requires a systems solution. So when you want to get somebody into recovery, you have to start with safe, stable, sober housing. You also have to form healthy relationships and positive peer associations. So right there, number 1 and 2, you can see Oxford in that little box, right? You have safe, stable, sober housing, healthy relationships, and positive peer associations. These aren't good ideas. These are things you have to do. It's not like, maybe you should try that. You got to try it. You have to do it. It's law of recovery. You have to work on someone's physical health, have access to meaningful work, employment, spirituality. We used to say spirituality. Now all the big shots got together, and the people that kind of talk about recovery, they don't like us using the word spirituality because I'm the government, the judge, and so now we use the word citizenship. But citizenship is just like how you're connected. And so to me, I'm happy putting the word spiritual up there because I understand what it means. And if you're in the recovery community, spirituality is just understanding that mystery of that which is beyond and that which is between. Like, what is this that we have in common with each other? And we're all part of something a lot bigger, and our values. But they call it citizenship now. You got to have sober fun, meaning and purpose, healthy habits, sleep, nutrition, exercise, movement, mood regulation. When you're having a bad day, how do you keep yourself on the rails? Community connection. And so that is really kind of a formula for addiction and addiction recovery. And so to illustrate that, it gets to imagine in your community, if you're from Oklahoma, I use the I-40. I-40 is the highway that travels all the way across the United States. It goes right through the middle of our community in Oklahoma City. And it's about a 6-lane highway both ways. And just imagine being stuck and just sitting in traffic, and you're stuck because nothing's moving. And so this is an illustration. If the person with a substance use disorder is in the far right-hand corner, and you're looking at the back windows of the cars, and he or she can't move forward because they're stuck in traffic. And so people will say, well, just quit using the substance. Well, the substance is the car that's sitting in front of you. But you know what? That car can't move until the car in front of that can move. And that can't move until the car in front of that can move. And then you got to kind of get way out in front of the traffic jam. And how do you get this traffic jam going? Now, everybody's traffic jam is a little bit different. So not everybody, this isn't a great example of everybody's traffic jam, but everybody's in a traffic jam if you're stuck in addiction. And so you got to think about all these different components of what makes it work. Pot is a peer association. You got to work on your mood regulation, mental health, employment, stabilization, good sleep. You got to surrender. You have a job, get your stable housing. If you can get all that moving, then the substance abuse can go out of the way. That's why we spend a lot of time trying to figure out the problem solving and recognize that addiction recovery it's not just one thing. It's a little bit of everything. And so also, you guys are probably familiar with this slide. When you're thinking about what success looks like, most people think success looks like this. You kind of, one day you wake up, you get some treatment, you're better, and never ever a problem again. But really, in reality, what success looks like, it's a little bit of a messy business sometimes. And so, often it is a process of, one step forward, 2 steps forward, 1 back. And so did you think about, if you expect that, and by the way, if you're having a bad day and you have a setback, that isn't necessarily, when you see the setback there, it's not necessarily someone's having a relapse. It might be a relapse. It's usually, the bigger dips would be something bad then compounded by a relapse. But, so let's say someone's a year or so in their recovery, and they just lose their job. Or they lose their relationship that they've really, the boyfriend or the girlfriend or their husband or wife, or something really bad happens, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh my God, I put in all this hard work and I just can't seem to quite make it. And because you fall from one point to another, it feels like it's so huge. But if you just stop and realize, man, hey, my worst day now is better than my best day was just a year ago. My worst day now is still better than it was then. And you got to just put this into perspective and understand that no matter if you're in recovery or if you're sober or if you're in addiction, life is a roller coaster. It just is. It's ups and there's downs. There's ups and there's downs, and it's about trying to figure out how to keep the big picture in mind, that hey, we're going to have ups and downs. So anyway, by the way, drug courts are very effective at crime reduction. On average, there's been lots of studies. This is an example of what they call a meta-study. A meta-study is a study of studies, and so each one of those is the study that was done, the number of drug courts that were studied, and the amount of crime that was reduced. And it varies quite a bit to as far as a 12% reduction in crime on average down to 8%. But so if you'd say the average is about 10%. So if you have a good drug court in your community, it also means that you have about a 10% reduction in crime. Every dollar invested in a drug court gets you about a $4 return. And so it depends on the population you have in there. But I don't know, does anybody in here get a 400% return on their IRA? Anybody? Okay, great place to invest resources in your community. They do work. I'm here to tell you people can and do change, and it's not just possible. People think, what's this miracle? Well, every once in a while you get one and they change. I'm like, no, it's not just like it's a possibility, it's probable. It's actually predictable. If you get into work in program recovery, you guys know this, if you have somebody that will actually come in and sincerely work the 12 steps or sincerely follow a path, they do get better. It's not a mystery. And so in our treatment courts, it's not just possible, it's probable and predictable. Nationally, drug courts have about a 60% graduation rate. I'm really happy to inform you that Oklahoma County, the community I work with, have 83% graduation rate. 4 out of 5 people that come in graduate, get their charges dismissed, really set on a different path. This is a lot of hard work. The difference between what's nationally and the difference in what we do in Oklahoma County, I'm going to actually give a lot of credit to Oxford, because we don't do this alone. I mean, really having Oxford as a really strong community partner is a big part. I mean, it's why I get to stand up here and say, hey, we're doing really good. If we didn't have Oxford, I don't know where we'd be. I don't think we'd be at 83%. But in our program, it tends to be two kinds of people that end up not graduating. People that run away, they keep running away, not just run away once, but they keep running away over and over again. You got to arrest them and try again, or they commit new crimes in the program. They really struggle and they just can't do it. Everybody else graduates, so we get good results there. Now, unfortunately, most of your courts. So when I'm talking about, these are drug courts, specialty courts. Not all drug courts are created equal. There are bad drug courts out there. Those are the ones that just are not following the model. They call themselves a drug court, but they're really not following the model that's put out. And so they say they do, by the way. They say they do, but it's not true. Because people say, oh, yeah, we follow evidence-based practices. Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, how closely? It's almost like saying, when we play football, you said, 10 yards, you get a first down, you got to get 7 points, you get in the end zone, well, 6 plus the extra point. So it's like, well, yeah, we play football. Well, that means you follow the rules of football, but there is a huge discrepancy in the quality of a football program. Okay, just because you play football doesn't mean you're any good at it. Are you good at understanding of what they're trying to teach you and really practice the fundamentals and really work on that? And you can become a great drug court if you really focus on not just following the best practice, but a skillful implementation of the best practices. So I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit. We do have, I'm not a big fan of incarceration. And the reason is, in Oklahoma, by the way, we are the incarceration capital of the world. And I'm being serious. I mean, we have the highest rates per capita for female incarceration, I think number 2 overall. We were number 1 in both men and women. Now we're like number 2 overall, number 1 in women, number 3 in men. To give you some perspective on that, like if you took everybody who's in prison in Oklahoma, everyone, and you let half of everybody go, we would still be ranked ahead of 23 other states. So we could let half everybody go, we'd still be a little bit right in the middle, you know, in incarceration rates per capita. So it also, incarceration does not treat or cure mental illness. So generally people don't argue with me whenever I say, well, if you have diabetes before you go to prison, you'll have diabetes when you get out. I'm like, well, of course. Well, if you're schizophrenic before you go to prison, you'll be schizophrenic when you get out. You're like, well, of course. Well, I'm here to tell you, man, if you have an addiction before you go to prison, you're going to have an addiction when you get out. Incarceration doesn't treat or cure that. I'm not saying it can't be a time to pause and reflect, and there are some people that go to prison, they don't use when they get out, but I would argue those people probably didn't have to go to prison in the first place. They could have probably got better in a community setting. They could have gotten better in a different environment, and they probably really didn't have an actual addiction. So one other thing in there I was going to point out is it does tend to make low-risk people worse if we send the wrong people to prison. And by the way, there are people that need to go to prison. There's people that are violent and predatory, but that's generally not the majority of people that we're sending. It tends to make low-risk people worse. And so if you are kind of, not a particularly, what we call highly criminogenic, so, it's like, so you and I, we don't know each other, right? Okay. But, huh? Right. Well, so no, but if I were to spend time really getting to know the 5 people that you hang out with, it would tell me a lot about who you are. I mean, I could know who you are by knowing who you hang out with. Well, we got people that just spent 3-4 years in prison hanging out with people that are more criminogenic, and they come out just a little bit more criminogenic than they went in. It tends to be a graduate school for criminality, a little bit more antisocial. So not interested. And you got to remember that 93% of people go to prison, come back to live with us. So this could be just as simple as, who do you want as your neighbor? Do you want somebody who's a little more criminogenic or somebody who's access to treatment and they're stable? Because 78% of property crimes, substance use, abuse, addiction is a relevant factor that's driving it. So anyway, you got to be careful here. Oxford, you guys can help. This guy, Brian Stevens, if you ever have a chance to meet him, he's an author, a speaker, a lawyer, death penalty lawyer, wrote a book called Just Mercy. It ended up being made into a movie. It's really interesting. I got to meet him, and he said, if you want to solve a problem, you got to get close to it. I don't know why it's not working right. They messed up my slide there. He said, if you want to solve a problem, you got to get close to it. And so when you think about, and this is what, with you, whenever you think how it is that you can help, how can Oxford help in your community if you want to work more closely with your treatment courts and actually be part of the crime reduction, part of people not having to go to prison, people getting healthy, investing in healing over punishment, you can do that. But sometimes it takes you educating your treatment court professionals. It takes you out there maybe advocating for what it is that you do. Unfortunately, not everybody understands. They don't. And so I'd ask you to that's what we're here to talk about, is partnering with your local treatment courts. It is really important to try to find a warm and friendly entry to that. So what I mean by that is, like, I don't know, you might not be able to just roll up and say, hey, judge, I'm here. You don't know me, but let me just tell you. I mean, some judges might be very open to that, and some of them are like, dude, who are you? I don't know. But if you can find someone who has had maybe a positive experience with treatment with the Oxford House, like a prison case manager or probation officers or I'd say therapists. My slides here. So think about how it is that you can find a warm entry into that treatment court, so they get to know you and get to know the work that you're doing, and partnering. Let your community leaders know, your faith communities, what you can do. So, but probably the number one thing that you can do is actually just run a good house. Is just let your, there's a guy named Albert Schweitzer. He was kind of a famous physician, went to Africa, built hospitals down there to cure people. And he said, I encourage people to live their argument. Let your life be your argument. And so it means just show up for what you care about. And so if you really want to do well, man, actually just start off with just running a good house. Just run a good house, run a tight ship, take care of your own ship first. It reminds me of, I read this, an autobiography of Steve Martin. So if you're a younger person, you may not know who that is, but the older timers, they know what I'm talking about. He wrote a book, the title of his book, Born Standing Up, but his argument is, be so good they can't ignore you. Be so good they can't ignore you. So if you run a good house, that's probably the first thing you can do is just make sure your house is in order. Be so good they can't ignore you. And so also whenever I think about people ask, well, Judge, how is it that you work with a specialty court? How would you want to do that? And I'm thinking, well, maybe one helpful analogy might be like, think about, well, if you were, so for guys in here, it's like if you were wanting to date a girl, or maybe an old-fashioned example, if you want to, we call it courting. It's like, well, how do I do that? You might introduce yourself and it's love at first sight, or it might take a little bit of courting, which is, what can I do? I don't know. Maybe just show up for their graduation, give them some $100 worth of gift cards that they can give out as incentives. Kind of get to know them and be around and some of exposure to them. And so think about it like strategically, like how would you date someone? How would you court them? And also, which also includes being patient. Being patient, understanding that the first time you show up, they don't know you, you don't know them. If you don't have an existing relationship, you kind of have to warm up to each other, and you got to have a little bit of a track record. And of course, if you want to date somebody, you also make sure you got yourself in order, right? You're running a tight game. And so just be patient and consistent, showing up, offering things for incentives, showing up at community stuff, finding that warm entry, being like the probation officer, the treatment provider, and starting a relationship. So anyway, laws of standard recovery, whenever, and by the way, if anybody of you have a judge in your community that like, I don't know, what's this Oxford thing, and you want to call me or say, hey, you can call Judge Stoner in Oklahoma County, and I'm glad to share with them the positive experiences I've had with Oxford houses, and how I believe that this is, again, not just a good idea. You have to have safe, stable, sober housing to be in, we say, was a law of recovery. I mean, this is not just a good idea. When you think about recovery, I'm here to tell you, you're the only one that can do it, but you do not have to do it alone. Matter of fact, when you realize that you've got to do your part, but you can't do it by yourself, we call in our drug court, we say recovery is a team sport. It really takes people pulling together to be able to do it. Your tribe is your vibe. That was actually one of my drug court graduates who's at Oxford House, and he was talking about, man, it really, having my tribe was a big part of my recovery, of course. Support and encouragement, accountability. Of course, housing is critical because you just cannot maintain close relationships. Well, your recovery with people that are still in addiction, that's a law. It's a law. If you break the law, if you say, oh, that's not going to work, and you might do it once or twice, and it's like, see, I can. Like, well, no, you can't, because you just started down the road of it never working again. You have to learn how to have sober fun. And so whenever I look at these laws of sane recovery, what does that mean? Where does that come from? In Oxford House. You guys are really good at all of these things. So I could not be a bigger advocate for the work that you're doing in the community and the people that are in recovery. So anyway, that's my contribution in my remarks. I hope it's been helpful. If I could ever be a resource for you, that's my email address. That is my chamber's phone number. You can reach out to me. And so, yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge. When you were saying something, it reminded me, I heard a long time ago that addiction is like that one disease that after treatment, you're left in a better condition than if you never had the disease in the beginning, because it's self-awareness. It's much like drug court. Now they're expunging and things like that. So you could have got a different crime, not been on drug court, and not got it expunged, to where after you complete the program, you're almost left in a better position than you were before you even started it. Our next panelist I love this guy. He's an Oxford House alumni regional manager, Joe Chavez. See, he's smart. He moved to where we vacation, so he's from Hawaii.
Thank you. My name is Joe Chavez. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I have been sober since February 28th, 1990.
Come in here, Joe.
You know, I got one of those clickers if you need it.
I don't
It's
know
really
what
cool.
I don't know what I need.
It's really cool, man.
Oh,
It's got a laser pointer.
Does it?
All right. Working with specialty courts, and to tell you about myself, I wasn't involved in the judicial system. I was very fortunate, but we started in Oxford House in Hawaii in early 90s, and our first drug court started in 1995, and we have a strong relationship with the court system, but there are, let me just, this is, these courts are drug court, veterans court, family court, and mental health court. So there's some of the courts that we have in Hawaii, and typically they are located in the area, like a downtown. It's separate from the courthouse, but most states and counties most counties you can go to and find the courthouse and find out if you have a specialty court in your area. Oxford House, drug court in Hawaii operates out of the central downtown court. And as of December 31st, 2021, I believe, there are, I've got some updated information. As of December 31st, 2021, there were over 4,037 specialty courts across the United States. The most common is drug court. It is the most popular, and but all of the specialty courts, they use common problem-solving courts to address, what they're trying to eliminate is recidivism. I think I said that correct, and try to arrest or stop the repeat offender. And we've had much success in Hawaii with drug court. And I think as far as Oxford House, excuse me one second. My laptop didn't survive the trip, and so I have two different versions of this presentation. Hang on. Okay. Because what I wanted to say at this one is new court members and drug court. Because what we try to do is, like Your Honor is very correct in saying, some judges will say, hey, what are you doing back here in this area of the courthouse? Who let you in here? And other ones will like, hey, it's nice seeing you. But I prefer that our best, the best example are the successful people in our Oxford houses. So I always try to get those folks to pool together and somehow if we could get a presentation together for the members of drug court. I'm hoping that the staff there and the judge will be impressed with them, but I'm more concerned, I'm more hopeful that the members of drug court will see the individuals, their peers in Oxford House, and be so inclined to move in. But I think it's important to remember from the House standpoint that every member that applies, whether drug court or not, they come in through the doors with flaws, and drug court clients are no exception. So I think that most of them, like many of us, had a lifetime of negative reinforcement, and I think this is so critical. Like when you're in Oxford House, this is your home. This is our home. So I try to prevent our folks from thinking, I equate it to this. When you're out in the world in a busy day, you're working, going to school, treatment programs, what have you, the last thing you want to do is come back to your house and jump through a bunch of hoops like it's a circus. It's like this is your place of solitude, of serenity, and you want to just make sure that you don't get caught up and try to be somebody's, probation officer, parole officer. So our members will teach the drug court staff a lot about Oxford House. And I put this up in no particular order because it's important for everyone in your house, but it's also important for the new people in drug court. You got to treat them just like anyone else. Or, excuse me, I said drug court, but I meant any specialty court. You got to treat them just like everyone. Oh, they said it yesterday in the breakout session. Everyone has one vote. We're all equal at the table. That is critical. That is so important. Try to treat everyone in the house the same. Don't make special rules for the person coming in with the specialty court. He's got a court officer that will handle that. We enforce the rules at the house. Give Oxford House manual and encourage to read and ask questions. This will benefit him, you, and the house for the course of the stay there, long term. If you can get individuals to understand that this is a way of life and that there is a way out of this darkness, it starts with that manual. I said, treat like anyone else in the house. I said that twice. It's important. It is important. You can't make special rules because Joe came in and he's got a, drug court or he's got mental health court. And you want to try to decide, you want to develop a professional rapport with the drug court office. Now, to me, that means I'm not calling the judge for any reason. I work best when I speak one-on-one with the staff so that we can, coordinate our actions. Because what I don't like is when the house, when you want to address the concern, and there's like Batman, oh, I was up at 11 o'clock and he didn't show up until 11:04 and I need to call his probation officer. It's like, no, calm down, or it's Santa, well, I wasn't home, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't either, so, and it's like, what are you, naughty or nice? Well, we're not crime fighters, and we're supposed to be in this together. And so you have to give, I think it's very important when Your Honor said, we're in this together. We're not, we have to be able to rely on each other. I lost track, but I did want to mention, I attended the, National Association of Drug Court Professionals in Anaheim a few years back. Those people can party. They can hold their own against a bunch of folks in recovery. I know that. I was there. Anyway, let them know that we don't want to run to the drug court. We don't want to run to the court to report on, every infraction that occurs at the house from one of their clients. However, if one of their clients is, we're putting them on a behavioral contract, and this is like the third one, and, things are looking dim, you might want to give a call and say, hey, this is what has been happening, and this is where it's going to go unless some changes are modified, are made. But always, in the shining example, our house. You want to attract people to your house, drug court, specialty court, guy off the street, guy in AA. You want to run a good house. Have a weekly house meeting, faithfully. Do your individual job assignment as an example. And that doesn't just mean do your house chore. It also means do the paperwork. Fill out the treasury report, the secretary. Do it before the meeting so you do it right and you're not rushed and you don't make everybody wait and you're confident in the numbers that you're about to give. And then the individual in the house, you do your assigned chore and then you follow up the numbers to make sure that they are in fact accurate. Take time to listen to the new people. Guy coming out of drug court, coming out of the jail system, prison system, I'm sure he needs somebody that he needs to talk with. And I don't know who it is. It might be you. use your personal recovery as a shining example of what can be gained by moving into Oxford House. There is no bigger, attraction than when I send a team over to a treatment facility and they see these guys that went through that same facility, but here they are, 18 months later, and they're rocking it. They're making it every day. They're getting up, doing what they have to do. They're sober, and they're actively involved in trying to help other people get sober. That's crucial. I have no questions. Questions at the end. Thank you.
I was trying to figure out that Santa thing. Was that like sees you when you're sleeping or something like? Good. Okay. Our next panelist is Miss Karen McKinnon. She's Oxford House alumnus and Women's Resource Coordinator in North Carolina. Karen came into sobriety on 7/26/1996. I was just getting going. She moved into the Brentwood Oxford House on October 11th, 1996, became a certified dental assistant in 1999, went back to college in 2011, when hired full-time for Oxford House as a women's resource coordinator. She is also a national certified peer recovery specialist, support specialist, certified substance abuse counselor, and a notary. Karen is passionate about helping women and their children. So please help me welcome Karen. Sorry, I did my best.
You're okay, Ron. You're absolutely fine. One correction, I used to be passionate about helping men. Not anymore. Hey everyone, I'm Karen. I'm a woman in long-term recovery, and I'm so blessed that I haven't found a reason to want to use. Sickness, poor health. When I came in Oxford House, I want to give you this story because at first I wondered, why am I on specialty courts? When I came in, I was on probation for taking money from my dad's friend's bookstore. He went out of town and had me run the bookstore, and we just partied. And that's what I thought you were supposed to do. But obviously, my dad thought that I needed a lesson because he told his friend, you need to press charges against my daughter. And he did. And I had never had any type of involvement with the courts or anything. But when I tell you, I was terrified because they said if you don't pay the money that you're owed, if you get a positive urinalysis, you're going to jail. I mean, they really scared me. So I had a wonderful PO, God rest his soul, Alan Wolf. I've never forgotten his name because he's the one that said, you don't really belong out here. Let's get you some help. And I said, well, nothing has worked. And he says, well, we're going to get you some help. So I went to treatment, and I came out, and I went into a program called Southlight in our area, and they help women with children. They help people in recovery that want recovery. So I left the Southlight program after 90 days, and I went into an Oxford House. And when I tell you, I felt like I was at home because I had a lot of money to pay back to probation. I think I was in jail for that one day, and I called my dad. I said, if you don't come get me, I'm going to burn the house down when I get there. You better come get me out of here. And yeah, I was a little dramatic back then. But so I think when dealing with specialty courts, I love the analogies everyone used. The analogies is what helped me. Like, I remember I'm a little geek. I like National Geographic. I love that magazine. Right. So I read about the sequoia trees. And I think I shared about this in one of our Oxford House women's meetings in 2015 or 16. Sequoia trees are an anomaly, and they are so magnificent to me. That is on my bucket list. Their roots don't grow down, they grow this way. And in growing that way, they connect with one another. That connection that they have makes each other stronger. And in relation to recovery courts, because we call it recovery courts in North Carolina, because we want people to recover, but we have to connect with them. I had to connect with the people in recovery court, and when they first asked us to come in, I said, well, we did accept people in recovery court. I don't live in a house, so I can't accept or deny. I said, but they leave owing a lot of money. And the reason they did, guys, is because they had to take care of their families. They had to pay restitution. And I mean, it was a lot of pressure. So I said, well, when you guys find some money for us, call me and we'll come on back down here and have a talk. And so a year later, they found some money. And when Kathleen and I got the email, I was like, oh, they didn't say how much the cap was on the money. And it's still going strong. So when people from recovery court come in, and I know that they're going to get some money coming because I invoice for them, I make a connection with the people who are in the houses. Because if we don't connect with them, they think, oh, somebody's paying my rent and I'm good to go. Well, first, it's EES, and no, you're not good to go, because if you're not paying these other fees that are being incurred and you're not following the basic guidelines that we have set for you to have a different life, see, that's what the Sequoias do. They keep each other in line, right? So what I believe in all my relationships that I have with community partners is that I have to communicate clearly. I have to let them know who we are, and I have to find out who they are. And that's where my coworkers come in. We have a presentation via Zoom, and we ask that the judge be on there as well. So we have judges in our recovery courts that are so, I guess I would say, accepting and compassionate, because just like Judge Stoner here, they don't want them in jail. They want them out being productive, and that's where the Oxford House team comes in. That's where their house comes in. And they don't know I'm calling, checking on them, but I have to call and check on them. I have to talk to after the release of information, I have to talk to their drug court person to make sure, are they doing what they're supposed to do? Are they making it there? What's happening? So now the relationship has gotten so tight between Oxford House, the recovery court team, and that person that's in recovery court. I had one poor little guy call me and say, Miss Karen, I'm just going to tell you, I relapsed. I'm just going to tell you. I said, well, you got to call your people. He said, I'm on my way down there now, but I had to call you. I'm sorry to let you down. And I said, don't let yourself down. You know, take care of you. And now that sweetie, he's back and he's got 8 months, and he just got sick and went in the hospital, bless his heart, and he had something happened to his gallbladder. And I called him and I said, are you okay? He said, no, Miss Karen, I'm not. I went down there and took him a plant and just said hi, you know, because some people are really alone. Again, it's the connection. Somebody does care, because I was almost sitting in prison, and we all know, I mean, I don't do prison. I didn't even do jail, not real well. So what I do with the recovery court participants, because I'm the resource coordinator statewide, North Carolina. So what I do with them, once I see they're getting a little stable and she's broken up with the second boyfriend and she's like, Miss Karen, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm like, okay, honey, you know. And she's doing okay. I'll go to her and I'll say, okay, what's your plan for when you finish? She said, well, I got to get a place for me and my kids. And I said, is it that simple? Is that what you're going to do? And she said, I hope so. I said, well, it's really not that simple, because I had a son that my mom and dad were taking care of, and he was my entire world, y'all. I mean, I left being in recovery, going to meetings every day, helping out in Oxford House, so I could be a soccer mom and do long division at 10 o'clock at night at the kitchen table. George, you know what I'm talking about. So it's important that with the recovery court participants that they have a plan for when they leave. See, that I think that's the reason why I feel like Oxford House is so vital for people. It's more than to just stay sober. We have a holistic approach because there's resources out there and there are people that care. So this little girl, even though she's gotten pregnant again, she's got her 2 kids. She was formerly incarcerated for quite a while. And our Recovery Alliance program has opened up housing for people specifically who were formerly incarcerated. And she can bring up to 3 children. Well, she's got the other 2, and she can bring her other one. But see, if I wasn't checking with them and checking on them, they wouldn't know that the resources are out there for them. She was in panic mode, getting ready to move in with the boyfriend she hates because she's pregnant and she's afraid. And just like when Judge Stoner talked about courage, man, if you forge through some stuff, I mean, what possessed me to go back to college when I had 9 months clean? I don't know. But I knew I wanted to be at home at night with my son, with him, just focusing on him. And, you know, I didn't want to be waiting tables and having somebody watch him, and I didn't want that to happen because I could have been incarcerated. I could have not had a life with him. So I needed to make the best life for him that I could, and that meant I needed to be honest in my relationships with myself, my sponsor, my house, any type of community partner that I was in line with. Because in order to do that, I had to work on myself quite a bit because I'm a handful, as y'all can see. Said Daddy House on fire. But we had to do check-ins with our community partners in recovery court because sometimes they would call me and say, I heard so-and-so's boyfriend is staying at the house all the time. And I said, well, that's really none of my business. You know, and I said that to say, well, of course, we're not going to let him stay there every night, but are we talking about a safety issue? Are we talking about something that has happened or transpired, violence of any sort? No, we're not talking about that. If a house has gotten COVID or one of our houses caught on fire one time, those things I will report to recovery court. Other stuff that's personal, that's for that person to work on. You don't need a tattletale when you're in recovery court where somebody's always saying something that you did and attacking you personally. But back to my beautiful sequoias. If you all have ever seen the sequoias, and all I've seen is National Geographic, it is so majestic. It is so, it quiets the spirit. And see, that's what we need for our Oxford houses to be. And in order for them to be that, we have to connect with them in a non-judgmental way and walk alongside them. You know, I don't care, you know, where you came from, what you did, how many children you've left behind, how many women you've beaten in the past. None of that is relevant here. What is relevant is what can I help you with your problem? And the first thing I can do is I can walk the walk. Because if I'm not walking the walk and I'm constantly judging you, you're not going to see anything that's attracting you to an Oxford house. So with people that come in, they already have help with mental health, and health is mental health. When I see someone that says something is wrong, we try to make sure that they have enough resources to help them, because the resources is what will make your life take off. You know, because you're going to get off of probation, you're going to get off of parole, and it's now what? And the now what is where I come in. But I'm not going to take up too much more of the time. You guys are awesome. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Karen. Our next panelist is Mr. Stephen Gum. He's an Oxford House resident and outreach worker in Washington State.
Get him. Oh, yeah, this is nerve-wracking. All right, thank you, George. Good, well, it's not morning anymore. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm an addict. My name is Steve Gum. My clean date is 3/11/19. So, yeah, like I said, I'm super nervous. It's the first time I've ever spoke in front of a bunch of people besides my chapter and house meetings. I just want to kind of tell a quick story about myself and how I ended up where I'm at. I was fortunate to move into an Oxford house right out of treatment. I lived in that house for 4 days before I was voluntold to become chapter chair. For the next 11 months, I was Tom Sawyered by my outreach workers, Annie Cleveland and Mick Schroeder. And now I am currently the outreach worker for the Olympic Peninsula. I am also one of 15 outreach workers in Washington State. I have been blessed to have covered multiple counties in Northwest Washington State area. I wrote a few things down that I thought would be important about drug courts and drug court in my area that I work with pretty closely. Drug courts are evidence-based programs that provide an alternative to transitional criminal justice cases for high-risk, high-need individuals struggling with substance use disorder. Drug courts improve lives in a variety of ways. They have been shown to increase rates of employment, help people obtain stable living arrangements, improve both mental and physical health, and enhance interpersonal relationships. Drug courts also help reduce levels of criminal behaviors, drug abuse, and are able to keep participants in treatment programs a longer period of time to enhance their recovery program. Here's a little experience that I've had working with the drug courts in my area in Washington State and Kitsap County. Today, I get to be that positive reinforcement between the residents of the houses and the drug court participants that live in our Oxford houses. I get to meet with judges. I get to meet with lawyers. I get to meet with compliance officers. I get to be present for those drug court graduations, which is amazing. Nice. Nothing that I like more than seeing people succeed and get their lives back. And when they're dismissed cases that brought them into drug court. I'm very excited to have been a part of the Alumni House. Grace Harbor County opened their Alumni House a few years ago. I was able to be a part of that with my current or previous outreach workers. I am very fortunate to have helped with the first alumni drug court alumni house in Kitsap County. And basically what that is a house designed to help people in their first phase of drug court because mistakes happen, relapses, disruptive behavior, non-payment of EES, things like that will get somebody expelled from an Oxford house. These houses focus on issues so they can continue building their foundation of recovery to better prepare themselves to enter into an Oxford house. Because generally in phase one, they cannot have jobs, they can't work. So they are relying on funding from different entities and sources, not just drug court, to pay their EES. And a lot of them, just to be honest, they're not ready in phase one. So drug court strongly encourages their participants to live in Oxford House because they know that they stand a better chance of recovery than any place else. And that's pretty much really all I had. I'm just truly blessed and grateful to be an outreach worker and to get to work with drug courts in my area. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and our last panelist, one of my guys, Michael Newcomb, New Jersey. He was one of my roommates, actually, a long time ago. Maybe I've had kids now, so what's my oldest kid? So about 12 years ago or something like that. He said I was his favorite roommate. Well, I added that part, but Michael Newcomb.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Michael Newcomb. I am a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is I haven't found an excuse to use any substance, commit any crime, or anything else since July 17th of 2016. I'm just going to give a little bit of my experience with drug court, try to save some time for questions. Personally, I had a very misconception of what drug court was during my addiction. I've been to treatment multiple times, and I got my information about what drug court was from us addicts in drug treatment facilities. And from what I heard, in there, it was just, it's a scam, and but like, it's not possible. And so I went with that for a very long time. I was in and out of treatment a bunch of times and was given the opportunity to take drug court multiple occasions. And I denied those opportunities and continued to use and continued to be in and out of the system, basically. And luckily, without the assistance of drug court, I did, at least this time around, I was on probation, so there was experience with POs and all of that stuff. But I got to meet other members in my Oxford house. I've been in and out of Oxford house since my first house was with George here in 2010. Yes. Unfortunately, it was not my last one. I've been in a bunch of others. But along the way, I got to meet a bunch of people that actually changed my perception. And this is just my experience as a house member, not as outreach. But that drug court actually does work. I've seen it change people's lives. And for those that actually took advantage of it and weren't trying to continue to use on drug court. My other specialty court was just recent experience as outreach. I recently, about a year ago, opened up a women and children's house in my area. It was our first one. So at that point, I was introduced to the family court system. And was able to teach I'm at a loss for, can't think of the words, just the people that work in the family court system about what Oxford House is and how it can benefit women with children that have substance use disorder or alcoholics, whatever it may be. And my experience with them is that they've sent a few women to our houses, and I've gotten to watch what Oxford House has been able to get these women their children back and go from adoption to reunification. And now one of the women in my house just recently got back full custody of her daughter, and that is due to us and what we do. And now I'm drawing a blank, and I want to leave a few minutes for questions. So, thank you.
Yeah. As Mike said, we're running out of time, some time left for questions, but I'd be hard pressed as a regional manager if I didn't let you know, if there's residents in this room that have lived in Oxford House for a year or more and are willing to relocate and work for Oxford House, I'm going to leave my cards here because I got to always solicit new me's and Tara's and Michael's and stuff like that. But if you guys have any questions, we can do by raise a hand or something like that.
now, and I was a reentry straight into Oxford House at a prison or whatever, and I'm wanting to open up Oxford House in my area that's strictly for reentry individuals. I was wondering if maybe you had any advice about anything with that.
Now, first I want to say thank you for your willingness to want to do that. That's very, very needed. I don't know, where are you from?
Kansas City area.
Kansas, okay. Yeah, well, thank you for your willingness to do that. Reentry, man, to me, that is probably one of the areas that we really need. When I say we, mean like just our community, our government, I tend to think a lot of people that are leaving prison, they intend to do well, but a matter of fact, right now we've been working in Oklahoma trying to figure out how do you hand off someone from prison and put them in Oxford, put them into safe, stable, sober housing. And I was talking to one of our state directors, and even though in Oklahoma we have like hundreds of people that they try to do that, only about 20% of them actually make it. So like out of everybody that applies to get into, and Oxford said, yes, we'll take you, maybe 1 out of 5 show up. They just somehow lose their way, on the way there. And just kind of being around, addiction, my sense is what happens is that people are leaving prison, and they're going, yeah, I'm going to go to Oxford House, but I need to go see my brother first. I need to go see my mom first, And of course, you can get there and have a beer. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a beer, right? And so the game's on, so we're just going to have a beer, and next thing you know, the beer makes other things seem more appealing, and next thing you know, they're off the races, and they never show up. And so, the advice, if you could figure out how to do this, which I don't know. I mean, it's figuring out how to have that almost like bed-to-bed transport. So, which is okay, you're leaving prison, and prison somehow takes you, or Oxford picks them up from prison and delivers them there, because it's that connection, man, is just, I think I don't have any data on it, but figuring out how to minimize the gap between prison and actually starting creating that really warm handoff between prison and Oxford, because 80% of them get lost between prison and Oxford, and so you could do that's a lot of good there, but yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on prison reentry? Talk to regional manager. Yeah, I thank you so much for your willingness to want to tackle that. That would just be so huge, because I think a lot of people leave in prison, they want to do well, they intend to do well, and they just really have not had enough structure. They've not had enough education around addiction to understand what their risks are. And so, man, they just get pulled off the rails really quickly, and then they're back in the same place they started from, and they lost that golden opportunity. So
Thank
just
you, Judge.
be sober. Thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead. Can you do it in one? Because we're over time. I'll give you 60
And anybody,
seconds.
I'll stay and answer any questions, even if we're over, if anyone wants to hang around. But yeah, I do. We have a Veterans Rehabilitation Court. We have VJOs. Yeah.
Yeah, we had them in Louisiana. Like, so for the two we have in Louisiana, they engage with you or like off to the side court. How does that work with a little bit more with the jail?
Man, I'm not sure I understand your question.
I know we got two for our state.
How about this? I'm going to let everybody go, and you can come say your question up here. Thank you guys for attending this session.